Hello. We are left with British legacy of politics and administration, and within the syllabus, there are a few terms like revenue administration, etc. Now, firstly, we'll overall understand what this British legacy of politics and administration is. After that, we'll study specifically those topics, such as how their legacy in revenue administration is, how their legacy in India indigenization of civil services is. Then other topics such as district administration, local self-government. So these are the specific topics we'll study. Now, within these topics, uh, within these topics, what we'll focus on is these topics are also independent topics within the syllabus. So there are different units specifically under this topic, district administration, issues in district administration. Today in our study, we'll understand the overall picture of it and the history of how they have evolved administratively. Uh, with after that, when it comes to local self-government is a different unit, two different units altogether: rural local self-governments and urban local governments. So these are separate units altogether. There are different issues that we'll study regarding this. We'll start. Now, what is this British legacy? Now, British legacy, if we think about it, British legacy was not to create a welfare state in India. British legacy was to create a colony that pays for or in which profit generation happens. Okay? It is basically a colony that generates profit. Now, for this profit generation, any kind of exploitation can happen. Okay? Any kind of exploitation can happen, and here we'll see or observe something called the administrative setup would be so that it will maximize exploitation, revenue exploitation, and in the process human exploitation. uh, while going through, we'll also go through certain ideas of certain scholars, that what they think about that time period, and in our answer, specifically, if a specific question is asked on this, we can incorporate their ideas as well. This dismantled indigenous systems and erected a formal, impersonal, and rule-based bureaucratic system. Okay, that was what British with the East India Company they brought in. While designated for colonial control and economic exploitation, this steel frame that we talk about, the bureaucracy, this steel frame paradoxically laid the institutional and procedural foundation for the modern Indian state. So the same revenue structure or same administrative structure was used to bring out the modern Indian state. Okay, that is all only evolved into the modern Indian state. So this is what Nehru said. The British created a steel frame of administration. Like it's a in a building, the steel frame is what? It's like this. This is our inside those pillars we see those steel rods going. So built a steel frame of administration, efficient but which is alien in spirit. Okay, completely alienated from the ground, from the needs of the ground. Okay, it was only designed to serve colonial interest. Okay? Now, it's basic history. Before 1858, this was the company Raj. Whenever the company only determined what kind of uh, work is to be done. Company determined everything, and company was somewhat controlled by the government there. Okay, eventually became controlled by government. But when the 1857 revolt happened, after that, the British crown took over the governance of the country. Okay? Now, uh, during that time, this act was passed, a Good Government of India Act, in 1958. It was passed so that with the British crown coming in, all the issues that the administration or the country was facing because of company rule, it will be solved. Okay? Because private parties, they were only seeking profit, and so-called British officials will more often than not think about uh, these British official will push more and more into more and more welfare orientation or whatever the British Raj stands for. Okay, the values of British Empire. So, under the East India Company, the Regulating Act came in. Under this, certain posts such as the Governor General was created to regulate the company affairs. Okay, these are basic historical overviews. Pitt's India Act, Board of Control was established in Britain. Okay? So all the company functions will be overseen by a parliamentary committee. Parliamentary supervision was brought. Then there was a Charter Act started. So Charter Act 1813 was there, 33 was there, 53 was there. We don't read all of it. Okay, what are important for companies? We just study a brief overview. This ended the company's commercial monopoly, turning it into a purely administrative body. Okay? It centralized legislative power in the hands of the governor. Okay? So this is how evolution is happening. Huh. Government of India Act of 1858. Now, Secretary of State for India was created. A new cabinet post was created in London, making the administration of India directly accountable to the British Crown. So, this Secretary of State was placed in Britain. In India, the Governor General or the Viceroy used to be answerable to the Secretary of State for India. Okay? And the Secretary of State was directly answerable to the British Parliament. So this was the first time some form of this executive being responsible to the legislature, that kind of setup was brought in. The Indian Civil Services was solidified as the elite administrative corps. The focus was on law and order and efficient revenue collection. That is why revenue collection become a very important function of the district administration eventually. Then the business of the government was distributed into different departments. That means by the Governor General from a top-down approach, different departments were given different new things. So separate things were given to different departments. It was divided according to that nature. Then from 1919 to 37, we see diarchy coming in into the provinces. Okay? So there were two forms of government. There were transferred and reserved. So in transferred subjects, what was there? Subjects were transferred to what do you say? Transferred to the for the provincial councils to take care of it. Okay? And reserved was directly with the Governor General. So Governor General was the ultimate authority in these. So all important portfolios were under reserved subjects. Okay? Dual form of government. Transferred subjects were given to Indian ministers responsible to the legislative council, while the reserved subjects such as police, finance remained with the governor. So politically or administratively, these are the pointers that still continue. Okay? So this is why we are studying what is the legacy of it. So bicameral legislature is also there. Transferred subject and reserved subjects are also there. Union list, state list, concurrent list. That is why these things are listed down. Then there is something they will bring in provincial autonomy. So diarchy was abolished at the provincial level and responsible government with Indian ministers were established. So this was created at the state levels. Okay, so state governments where chief minister was there who was elected, or the ministers were elected out of that body, out of that legislative body who used to elect it, and they used to be directly responsible to the legislature. Now, see, we'll study more in detail under this. So wait, just let's continue with the overview. We'll go into the detail as we progress. We also see a secretariat system, that there is a secretariat who is responsible for policy formulation, and there are field bodies. Field bodies implement. Okay, so you might see secretary of a particular government, right? Finance secretary, revenue secretary. Then there are ministry, different from ministries have secretaries. They have secretariat. They head the secretariat. Their work is policy formulation. Okay? And when it goes to the ground, it means policy is being implemented. And this was the. Then there are field agencies also. Field agency are responsible for policy implementation, as it's very well understood. So, what other legacy we have when it comes to politics and administration? We also have judiciary, which is integrated in nature, and there is codification of laws as well. So, criminal laws are codified. Codified laws. These are British legacy also. Financial administration. So today also we have certain offices like the CAG and the annual budget. This budgetary process, there were also the legacy of there was something called the official auditor general that was there, right? And CAG is the continuation of that idea, that there is a particular office that audits the government accounts. See, this cultural part, we'll do it in a better way here because we'll start with more details. Now, when it comes to legacy, first thing we understand is the indigenization of Indianization of public services. That means in the beginning, it was only the British who used to be very much interested in being in the civil services. Okay, being in the civil services means there was something called the covenanted civil services of India. The covenanted civil services. So the ICS, the Indian Civil Services exam, it was known as the ICS exam before that, and it was also called covenanted civil services. That means it was like the imperial civil services. Okay, we'll read that in detail. So initially, only the British used to be senior officials within the administration and the government. Indians were only allowed at the junior levels, junior clerical levels. They were allowed. So uh, because of this hierarchical division, what used to happen is so the decision makers were always the British. Indians had no power. They only had power to carry out those orders. That was the only. So you must have seen in certain movies also there would be some British commander, uh, but all the troops would be Indians. Okay, so important positions were only given to British. Now, eventually, when the national movement started, or the early nationalists, they wanted Indians to be a part of the civil services as well, so that Indians are the decision makers at how India should be ruled. Yes. So the story we'll read under this is starting from where only British were allowed into the services, into an open competition, and then Indians taking over from there. See, initially there was something called the covenanted civil services. Covenanted civil services are not only the British or the Britisher would be, or the British will be the member of this covenanted civil services who are the decision makers. Okay? And they excluded Indians from being a part of this. Okay? Exclusion of Indians. This was very exclusionary in nature. The Charter Act of 1833, it included a clause. Um, so legally, this Charter Act 1833, it legally allowed Indians to become a part of it, but procedurally, it was impossible for Indians to be a part of it because the exam used to happen in London, and at a very young age, you'll have to give and clear that. So, and the syllabus that was asked, it was asked whatever the British used to read. Okay. It was Greek philosophy, things such as that. In India, there was no education system like that. So they essentially made it legal for Indians to join the civil services, but operationally made it impossible. Okay. So this act, it included a clause stating that no native of India would be disabled from holding an office by reason of religion, place of birth, descent, or color. However, in practice, it was dead later. Basically, it said, of course, Indians can be a part of covenanted civil services, but in practice, It was nothing like that. Now, Lord Macaulay, there was a committee that sat in 1854. Okay? Now, they recommended replacing this patronage system of East India Company with a merit-based system of recruitment through open competitive examinations. Open competitive examinations, if it is asked to you, especially these will be asked to you in GS and prelims also. But when did this merit system come into the civil services? It came with this 1854 recommendation of the Macaulay Committee. Now, Macaulay Committee, Macaulay Committee gave a certain what do you say? The recommendation was to open it up uh, from what you understand what patronage system means. Patronage means whoever the company officials like, they'll make that person the officer. Yes, there is no recruitment, there is no exam. Patronage. If you like someone, you make them. This means what? This means there is no streamlined recruitment process. Whoever the company thinks fit, the company will let them be. So, this Macaulay committee, it said, we want to bring in merit-based recruitment. How will be the merit-based recruitment happen? It will be done through something called uh, open examinations. And open examinations, these are like the civil services examination of today, but at that time, things were very different. How different? The story I told you, the examinations were held only in London. Okay? Curriculum was heavily based on Greek, Latin, and English classical education. Whatever Greek, Latin, and English education were there, according to that. And the age limit was started with 23, but later reduced to 19. So this was how tough it was made for Indians to access the civil service. Okay? Have you heard of him, Dadabhai Naroji? So he wrote a book called Drain of Wealth. Okay? In this Drain of Wealth, what he did was uh, he said the salaries that these British people, these British officers, they are getting from Indians, or from Indians when are they're earning in India, these salaries they are sending as remittances to Britain. So in India, they are working and they are exploiting Indian labor, and they are taking all the profit and keeping it in Britain. This means they are draining India from the wealth they are generating. So essentially, their problem was that when lot of civil servants, so the British government used to function with these civil servants only. If all the highly paid civil servants are British only, that means in India money is not staying. Money is going away to Britain. Yes. So Dadabhai Naroji had this idea. Now, more interesting things will happen in the following period. So there was growing agitation by organizations like the Indian National Congress. It forced British to review their policy. Okay. This reviewing of the policy, it will by pressure of early nationalists, it will happen with something called the Aitchison Commission of 1886. This was appointed by Lord Dufferin, and this commission was asked with devising a scheme to fulfill the aspiration of Indians, so that whatever the Indians are demanding, you fulfill those aspirations. Okay. Now, Indians wanted at that time that there should be a simultaneous examination happening, one in London and one in India. Anywhere in India, you hold it so that Indian people who want to be the part of civil services, they can give that exam and stay here. Yes. So they abolished the Aitchison Commission. Did not do that. Okay. He said that no parallel exams can't happen. Only it will happen in London. Abolished the distinction between covenanted and uncovenanted services. So presently you know that there are PCS officials who can get promoted and become IAS, IPS rank they can achieve. Previously, what used to happen under this was there used to be two types of civil services: covenanted civil services and uncovenanted or non-covenanted civil services. This used to do what? The who are covenanted means of a higher level, ICS. Uncovenanted means you are like a non-gazetted officer. Okay? Now you can't. So Indians can never be uh, covenanted. You can only be uncovenanted. So Hutchinson Commission replaced this distinction. Okay? They proposed a three-tier classification: Imperial Civil Services, ICS, top tier posts, recruitment from which would still happen only from in England. Okay? Recruitment will only happen in London. Okay? Provincial civil services, it's like the state PCS posts. This will these are intermediate posts that will happen through in India, and Indians are allowed to join the provincial civil services PCS exam. And uh, subordinate civil services, that means lower level posts are there. Indians were already working in that post. So Hutchinson Commission said only the top level will be held in England. Rest Indians are able to welcome to participate. It raised the minimum age limit for Imperial Civil Services exam to 23. That means initially it was 21 under Macaulay. They raised it to 23. Now, what was the impact of this? This created something called the provincial civil services, and it opened more opportunities to opportunities for Indians. Okay, today uh, these state services examinations, they are also called PCS exams. Okay? But in reality, what is it written? State Public Service Commission, right? State Public Service, PSC. PSC, I mean State Public Service Commission. They're still called PCS because of this provincial civil services. PCS exam, it's commonly called, right? So the most powerful posts, it remained firmly in the hands of the British. Okay. Then comes the Islington Commission. This report was published in 1917 after the World War I was about to end. It recommended that 25% of higher posts should be filled by recruiting Indians. Okay, all the higher posts, 25% should be filled by Indians, just to let the nationalists be happy about it. Okay. Advocated for conducting simultaneous examinations for the ICS in both England and India. Okay. ICS examination should happen in India also. So it suggested that recruitment for services like education, medical, and public work should primarily be done in India. So this is a committee that is recommending. The British are not implementing it then and there only. The recommendations were considered inadequate. The recommendations were considered inadequate by Indian nationalists, but the context had changed dramatically due to India's contribution to war effort. So this means Indians wanted more concession from the British at this time. So under in 1919, it's also called Montagu-Chelmsford Act. Yes, because of this report, they explicitly accepted the demand for simultaneous examination. Okay, Montagu-Chelmsford Act to be held in London and Delhi. It proposed 33% of the superior posts in the ICS should be recruited in India. That means the Imperial Civil Services, 33% should be Indians. This percentage was to be increased annually by 1.5%. So this means eventually in 15 years, So it will be more than 55%. So you can see how the evolution is happening. Indianization of civil services is happening because Indians are brought into more and more through these committee recommendations and these acts. So this was the first time this policy was made clear. Now in 2023, 2024, 1923 and 24, sorry, their recommendation will form the Union Public Service Commission also. Okay? Because recently, in 2025, the 100 years were completed of UPSC. Royal Commission on Superior Civil Services, popularly known as the Lee Commission. Now, what did it recommend? It recommended 40% should be British of Imperial Civil Services, 40% directly recruited Indians, and 20% Indians promoted from the provincial civil services. This is what also happens right now. Promotion happens from PCS to the All India services. The goal was to achieve a 50-50 ratio of Europeans to Indians in the superior civil services within about 15 years. Okay? So within 15 years, this has to be done. And this recommendation of establishing a public service commission. So UPSC will be established right now, 1990. This led to the creation of the first public service commission in 1926, the precursors to today's UPSC. So 25-26, this period it was created. Because usually the dates are a bit shifting here because when the order was passed, when it was implemented, and actually it was created. So even though it was passed in 25, it got created and became operational in 26, 27, then things started happening. This is how it used to actually happen. Because it will take almost 3 months for that order to come here through the ship. Okay. That's it. Then, in 1935 Government of India Act, the introduction of this provincial autonomy. Now, if provinces are autonomous, who are working under this? The bureaucracy is working. The bureaucracy is 60% Indian now, 20% through promotion and 40% through direct recruitment. Indians are 60% in top Imperial Civil Services. And when it comes to PCS, all PCS are Indians. So suddenly the bureaucracy and the legislative assembly was populated by Indians. Now you can see, essentially the system we run was actually made by the British, and slowly Indians were introduced to this systematic idea of governance. Okay, that is the true legacy of the British Empire, that still we are following their system of administrative setup. We are following their system of what parliament should do, how executive should be. That is, so basically with this time, British slowly they introduced these ideas. Of course, these demands were done by Indian nationalists, and British were just bowing down to those demands. Now, these legacy, basically, the unit is focused on the legacy part. The syllabus is focused on what is the legacy, what are they leaving behind. Now, India inherited, it's called administrative unity. So India inherited a unified all India administrative structure because of this. Sardar Patel referred this as the steel frame that keeps India together. Then the institutional framework of merit-based and politically neutral recruitment. So you see This merit-based recruitment, in theory, it started after 1854, after Macaulay started. Woodrow Wilson, we studied in paper 1, unit 1, that Woodrow Wilson wanted to uh, introduce this merit-based system during the late 1890s in US. So you can see in India, this best practice was introduced by the British Empire. So merit-based recruitment, rule of law. Rule of law was introduced that all of the whatever bureaucracy is doing, they'll have to maintain law and order. Okay? Those laws can be very much what do you say used against Indians, but still the law was upheld. No matter how unjust that law is, that law was about to be upheld by this bureaucracy, and it created experience amongst Indians that how to administer. Okay. This was very much important. So when we study, do you remember under Farrell Heddy? Farrell Heddy gave two examples that uh, there are two states that are an exception within developing countries where bureaucracy uh, did not take over politics. Unbalanced polity. Yes, those two countries were India and Sri Lanka. Why? Because of this particular feature that British brought in. Indians knew how to administer themselves, and Indian politicians, through this Government of India Act 35, they knew how to control the bureaucracy. Yes. So this slow process of letting Indians know how to govern themselves is something a legacy of the British Empire. Now, what are the problems that they created? They created an elite cadre. This Babu culture that they created is still a problem. Yes. Still, even after Lord Mackerroll's commission was 1854, second ARC was 2007 or 2006. After 152 years, still a committee recommending that administration should be citizen centric, because the administration still faces this problem of elitism and alienation from the issues that people are facing. Yes. Now, it was a tool of the state and not the people. So Bipin Chandra, historian, he argued that colonial bureaucracy was primarily an instrument of control, designed for revenue collection and maintenance of law and order. And it is not structured to be responsive to popular needs or to function as a service delivery mechanism in a democracy. Now, Rajni Kothari, so these are the names you will have to drop. Okay? Rajni Kothari, Bipin Chandra. We'll also see what Amartya Sen also has something to say regarding this. Just to mind, I have to take a call. Hmm. Uh, huh. Now, Rajni Kothari argued that bureaucracy, with its colonial mindset, often acted as a brake on socio-economic transformation. So the mindset is colonial. That is why it is not a body that can deliver socio-economic development. These are also a legacy, negative legacy of the British Empire. That how this colonial mindset bureaucracy, on their back, independent Indian policies are not being able to carry it out because the bureaucracy was structured in a way that was there to control the Indian population, not that to provide them services. Okay? Colonial mindset तो हो गया. Generalist versus specialist. Generalist versus specialist. This debate is still, this issue is still there. That you are creating a bureaucracy that just knows the general things. That is not very specialized in nature. That is why what is required is you need specialists in particular departments. Agriculture, you need a specialist. Medicine, you need a specialist. Things like that. Now, the next, so indigenization of bureaucracy, Indianization of bureaucracy, you understand that how Indianization happened with different committee recommendation, acceptance, etc., etc. This particular thing happened. Then comes revenue administration. Okay. Now, this is the next term that is used in your syllabus. So, first unit will use, will go word by word. Then we'll shift to issues. After doing all the issues, we'll come back again to whatever is written in the syllabus and we have missed out. Revenue administration next. So, all of this administrative setup that was created, two were the most primary reasons for that. One was collection of revenue and maintaining law and order so that collection of revenue can happen smoothly. This was the method. Now, this revenue administration, there were three different types of revenue administration that happened under this. What all were there? First was the permanent settlement or zamindari system. Let's also read Ranjit Guha. Now, he argues that British fundamentally altered the very concept of land ownership in India. Land ownership was traditionally, everybody knew, okay, it is that family's land. But British brought in, firstly, they brought in those paper record. Record they brought in. That land record should be there. Who owns this land? How this measurement is going to happen? Initially, under Mughal administration, it was there. But do you think those administrative documents would have been passed to the British? No. They created according to whoever is in power. They replaced a fluid, custom-based system of rights with a rigid, legalistic framework of private property. So this very idea of creating private property out of the, by law only. So people did not know what private property was at that time. There was a lot of community ownership. It was divided according to caste groups. Okay, so British started and came in and changed it completely. Completely, the very idea of modern contracts enforced in land ownership they brought in. Right? The goal was not just revenue maximization. What was the goal? It was also creation of a stable social order that would be loyal to and serve the interest of the colonial state. So the British thought once we legally show that okay, zamindaris are owned by these zamindars and we will legally protect them, that means we will create a cadre of people who will be very loyal to the British crown. Yes, to bring in stable social order. This shift from custom to contract had a devastating consequence, especially in the rural population. Now, how so? But we'll come to this. Under Rayatwadi system, what happened was this rural population, they did not know how this was going to happen, how things are enforced in courts. If somebody has a land dispute, previously they used to go to the whoever the village elders were and they used to decide. Now you have made these court systems. These court systems, uh, normal peasant, he does not know what a court is, what a lawyer is, what a judge is. They don't know. Now, how would they enforce their own rights? So, essentially, these contracts were created, but what kind of a society was that? It was a prismatic society. Yes. So, a prismatic society, that is why it was tough for them to, what do you say, go ahead and implement that in ground. So, this backfired for the British. It created a lot of resentment within the rural population. Table basically I have shortened it, but the real stuff is below only. So there are three different systems in which they divided the revenue administration. Okay. So first is the zamindari, something called the permanent settlement. Now the British recognize zamindars are not just revenue collectors but also proprietors of the land. So zamindars were seen as once if you win them over to the British side, you will rule India forever. Okay. If you are fighting against the zamindar, because zamindar is a very powerful local elite there, he has a lot of following and a lot of asset also in that area. So proprietors. In return, the zamindars had to pay a fixed sum of revenue to the state by a specific date. It's called a sunset law was brought in. I'll explain what it is. Now, under permanent settlement, for example, the British said that okay, for the next 20 years, you pay this much amount to us every year. They told the zamindars. Now zamindar owns all the land within that territory. Now anything that happens, zamindar has to pay that amount. If they do not pay that amount, they used to take away the zamindari and give it to somebody else. Okay? So from they became proprietors of that land. Okay? The notorious sunset law stipulated that if payment did not arrive by sunset of the due date, the zamindari would be auctioned off. It will be open for auction. Now, objective was it will create a stable and financially secure income for the state. And you are fixing a revenue. So, Zamindar also knows that for the next 20 years, he'll have to pay that much amount to the British. So, and they also wanted to create a political alliance within these wealthy Zamindars. And thirdly, it will be very easy for administrative convenience because zamindar is responsible for collection. You just go to the zamindar and collect the money. It is very easy for you administratively. Before that, what you need to do? You have to go to every peasant's house, see how much is the collection to be made. It's not necessary anymore. So this is what the British created. Now Ranjit Guha says, Ranjit Guha is a scholar of that era, modern India. You use his name however frequently you want to use. Permanent settlement was a political move to create a loyal class of local gentry as the Indian version of English Whig aristocracy. Basically, they are saying local elites are there, they are termed as aristocrats in Britain. So they wanted that these aristocrats or these elites should support the government, whatever we discussed about. These aristocrats would act as, or these zamindars will act as buffer between the state and the peasantry. Okay? Buffer how? That any kind of problems that the peasantry has, with the revenue collection, they'll first curse the zamindar or fight against the zamindar, not the British state. So immediately they created a buffer between the population and the British as zamindars. So any kind of issues or any kind of rebellion that happens against the zamindars, not the British. It was a brilliant move by them to consolidate their own power. However, this policy led to a rise of absentee landlordism, a complex chain of sub-infeudation which maximized exploitation. I can explain. The actual cultivator was reduced to a tenant, stripped of all traditional rights, a process scholar termed as depeasantization. Basically, what means was the zamindar who used to first live in that region, he says, now I no longer need to stay there.
मोबाइल देखा जा
I'll
रहा है
let somebody else manage it. I'll stay in a city comfortably
क्या कर रहे
and
हो
I'll enjoy whatever the money is coming. Yes. So the manager who was appointed, he'll say, why do I have to see all the villages? I'll appoint other managers, small managers. At this level, a lot of things happen. Now, tell me, for example, the British and the zamindars have agreed that zamindar, so there are 100 crore rupees that is being generated from one zamindari. Okay. For example, this is one zamindari. 100 crore rupees is being generated. British side will keep 50%. Okay. British side will keep 50%. Example. That means 50 crores will keep. Now the zamindar will keep the rest of the 50%. 50 crore. But where is the zamindar living now? City. So actual revenue collection should have been 100 crores. Okay. That is the amount revenue collection should have happened within 1 year. The zamindar is living in city. Zamindar wants 50 crores. British wants 50 crores. Both will get it. Okay. What do these managers, multiple managers at level, what will they get paid? Not salary. Then exploit the peasant more and extract more money for themselves. So if 100 crores was to be collected, they'll collect 120 crores. 20 crores they'll keep with themselves, send 50 crores outside. This created this chain. So how else will these people get paid? The managers that are there. Okay, so they are also acting as small zamindars. Yes. So the exploitation of the peasant who is actually working, that exploitation of peasant increased. So even though British thought that we have not raised the rate yet, we have only kept it 100 crores, but the peasant in real life was about being exploited 120 crores, 130 crores, or 140 crores. This created a lot of problems. That means suddenly the pressure was so much on the peasants, they started leaving farming or going off to other places to work. At that time, you will see a lot of people of Bengal and Bihar at that time, they'll shift out to different countries outside. They'll go to some countries like Mauritius, and the present day West Indies, they'll go to regions like these to work as plantation laborers because the work here they were doing, there was too much exploitation. If a famine happens or agricultural failure happens, this does not reduce, this stays the same. So you'll have to pay this amount. Yes. So this was the system. This is how the problem was there. You must have seen that movie Lagan. Okay. So Lagan means what? It is similar to Lagan, right? So you'll have to pay no matter what happens. Yes. So what was the impact on peasants? The most devastating aspect was this: the actual cultivators were reduced to the status of tenants at will. What happened was, people used to cultivate things before, they used to have a revenue sharing with the zamindar. Okay? Zamindar used to take 20%, 30%, 70% the cultivator used to keep. And cultivator used to live on the land and everything he had there. This was a comfortable village life that was going on since the Mughal period. What then happened was, British came in, this thing started. So who owns the total land now? Zamindar owns the total land. Okay. Who has the zamindar given it to? The local managers. Zamindar has appointed managers. Managers are paying zamindar money and the British money. Now these zamindars have done what? Or these managers, they have hired peasants as laborers on the land. So so previously these cultivators used to have certain rights on land. Now they have no rights. They are merely uh, what do you call merely laborers. Okay? They were subjected to exorbitant rents. That means illegal cess. This 20 crore is illegal cess, and could be evicted at the zamindar's whim. If the zamindar wants, they'll remove that person. Absentee landlordism. This was we studied. Landlord used to stay in the city. Okay? He does not want to deal with the hassle. He wants 100 crores in total. 50 he'll give it to rest to the British. This was to be the arrangement. Since the state demand was fixed, zamindar could extract as much as they wanted from the peasant. Now I took an example of 100 crores. Okay? State has to be paid 50 crores. Does that mean 50 crores, Zamindar only can extract 50 crores? Zamindar can extract 400 crores and keep 350 with himself? Who says no? That's the logic, right? Zamindar can extract how much they wanted. So British made this ingenious move that you let Zamindar be the bad guy. We'll get money, stable money, and a lot of problems. So whatever problems will be, Zamindar will deal with it. Zamindars could extract as much as they wanted from the peasants. This led to the rise of new class of urban absentee landlords who sublet their rights to a chain of intermediaries with the ultimate burden falling on the cultivator. Chain of intermediaries are what? Those managers that are there. Yes. Now on the state, initially it provided stability. Till the time Zamindars did not realize that okay, we can extract how much ever we wanted. The state lost out on future increases in revenue as agricultural prices and cultivated areas grew, while its share remained frozen permanently. Permanent settlement means what? It is permanently settled for the next 20-30 years. This is the amount of money you will have to pay. Now, British thought, will we give this 20 years time to the zamindars? So, after 20 years, what will happen? The zamindar would want to increase his capacity because he'll have to pay 50 crores to us permanently. Every year, he's paying us. But if he increases the revenue generation capacity of that area, he'll have to take this. For example, he'll have to, what do you say? He can increase the capacity and increase his income. So it will provide impetus to the zamindar to invest more in agriculture. The opposite happened. Zamindar went away. Managers used to milk how much ever they could milk from the peasant. And this problem started. Now this was permanent settlement. This used to happen. See certain other details of permanent settlement. Let's see. Under Lord Cornwallis, this was started. 1793. Regions Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, parts of northern Madras. This was there. Ownership was vested in the zamindar. Revenue assessment, that means fixed in perpetuity, that is permanent. And it created a loyal landed aristocracy, minimal administrative burden on the state. They're loyal in nature. Understood? And absentee landlordism happened and extreme exploitation of peasants. Now let's see another system. Rayatwadi. Madras Presidency and Bombay Presidency, these used to happen. This system established a direct relationship between state and the ryots. That means what used to happen in a permanent settlement? State is there, zamindar is there, and under zamindar there are peasants, or cultivators. A ryot wadi means, so ryot means the cultivator. It's a term used for cultivator. So there was no intermediary. So it was state, and below state it was the ryot or the cultivator. Direct relationship. The individual ryot was recognized as the proprietor of the land. Whoever is cultivating is recognized as the proprietor of the land, subject to payment of land revenue. The revenue was fixed based on a survey and assessment of the land potential and was revised periodically. This was not permanent settlement, it was revised periodically. Now, what are they paying the government? Land revenue. Who collects land revenue? The district collector collects land revenue. That is where this rank comes from. That is why the term used collector. So what is the objective of this? One, it was to maximize the revenue. That means if you remove the intermediary, zamindar, and if the total revenue collection is 100 crores, those 100 crores directly goes to the British. 50 crores need not be shared with the zamindar. It was a better system because whatever the British policy were, it was directly implemented on the riots. Okay, not no zamindar, no intermediary class. There was no managers who were taking their profit. Okay? Now, this was led by a particular philosophy of utilitarianism, okay? That you let individuals uh, give individual ownership of property, and if the British says for the next 10 years will take whatever this much 20% of your uh, uh, cultivation, whatever revenue you are generating, that person who is cultivating, he would want that for the next 10 years I'll have to pay this amount. What I'll do is I'll expand my agricultural capacity. If I was producing for example 100 tons, now I'll produce 150 tons, so that profit for me. And because there is stability, you are allowing the cultivator to make decisions themselves. Legacy and impact. The revenue generation, the revenue demand, however, was very much high, 45 to 55%. They were very much high. So state acted as a zamindar only. The revenue demand was often fixed at an exorbitant rate, leaving the peasantry with barely enough for subsistence. This means it stripped the peasants from all kinds of money they wanted to generate. Then there is peasant indebtedness. So to pay this, to pay high revenue in cash, peasants were forced to borrow from these money lenders, also called the sahukars, often mortgaging their land. This trapped them in a vicious cycle of debt. And this is what still continues in those areas of Bombay Presidency, which is also Marathwada. Present day. A lot of farmer suicides happen. Why? Because they take a lot of loan from money lenders, mortgaging their land, and agricultural crop failure happens, no rain happens, farmers do suicides. Yes. So this is a reason it started from that time. Land alienation. There was a widespread failure to pay revenue or repay loans led to large-scale transfer of land from cultivating class to non-cultivating classes like money lenders and merchants. Now, if peasants have mortgaged their land and do not pay the money, whom does that land go to? Money lender. Because you have taken money, you have mortgaged your land, If you don't repay money, that person will take your land. So lot of land went to these money lenders and merchants. These are not cultivators, they won't cultivate. So in the larger scale, the British policies failed because if they would have kept this revenue amount a little bit less, for example 25% or 20%, cultivator would be able to pay back that amount. Yes. So in the long term, the British suffered a lot because of this. A lot of agitation against them. A lot of money lenders, agitation against money lenders also. You will see those Deccan riots that will happen. They'll burn the record keeping books of the Sahukars. Okay? So this is why this Rayatwadi system was very much exploitative to the peasants also. Even though on theory it was better than zamindaris, but in practice it created a new form of zamindars in the state and money lenders also. Because the revenue collection happened through what? Not kind, through cash. That is why you need a money lender. So, Rayatwadi system, it was brought in by Thomas Munro and Alexander Reed. Okay. Madras, Bombay presidencies, part of Assam and Coorg, almost 51% of India. So individual collector or individual cultivator was the person in focus. The ownership of land was of the cultivator. Yeah. It was periodically revised every 20 to 30 years. A high tax burden led to alienation of land. Then comes the Mahalwari system. That was the northwestern provinces, the present day Pakistan, Punjab, that region. This Mahalwari system was there. Holt Mackenzie was the one who created this. Northwestern province, central India also, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, those areas was also there. Now, what was the unit of settlement? Village or the estate? So, village was called a mahal, and that village was responsible to pay money. So, who is the owner of the land? So, commonly owned by people. Okay. Revenue assessment, it was periodically revised. So, let's see the impact of this. This was a hybrid system. The unit of assessment was a village or an estate that was called mahal. The land was held jointly by the village community. The village headman or the lumbardar was responsible for collecting revenue from the peasant and paying it to the state. So, village headman was responsible for collecting revenue and paying to the state. What was the objective? To preserve the traditional institution of Indian villages. Yeah. And it incorporated elements from both, letting freedom of those cultivators and ownership of the cultivators, and in zamindari they wanted to reduce the administrative cost, so they do that. So the village guy will collect and send it to them. What it led to? Village community was disintegrated because of this. Now Eric Stokes is an historian. Stokes says the system, while intended to preserve traditional village community, ultimately destroyed it. The introduction of fixed property rights, a rigid cash-based revenue demands, and the legal ability to mortgage and sell land undermine the collective ethos of village. This created stratification within the community, empowering a few dominant families. Now, village is headed by, for example, a few dominant families. Okay. Now, those few dominant families started oppressing the lower classes. And oppressing how? They used to mortgage their land, they used to demand cash. And who will pay cash? They'll have to lend money from the money lender. Where else will cash come from? Money lenders were the bank of that time. It will come from money lenders. So the same problem happened and the village community disintegrated altogether. because you created a difference between the village elites and the lower classes. Yes, impoverishment, over assessment of revenue led to widespread impoverishment of peasantry. Overarching legacy of British revenue administration. So, what was the administrative legacy of this? The revenue administration they used to have. It systematized the land record. The present day we also have these terms: patwari, tehsildar, district collector of this. Okay. The British created a sophisticated and detailed machinery to how to survey land, how to assess the production of a land, how to fix a particular revenue. Okay. This system of maintaining land titles and revenue records was a major administrative innovation. Okay. Secondly, rule of law in property. They made land a commodity, that now you can sell land, mortgage land, do things with land. It made it a commodity. Centralized revenue administration. That means they created the office of district collector, which was had a lot of power to collect these amount of these kind of land revenue. Socio-economic legacy. That means impoverishment of peasantry. Impoverishment of peasantry happened, drain of wealth happened, we have explained. Very easy. Post commercialization happened. They wanted cash. Where will cash come from? Cash crops. What are cash crops? That you only sell, you don't consume. Things like indigo, cotton, they are cash crops. High cash revenue demand forced peasants into forced commercialization, shifting from subsistence food crops to cash crops. Yeah. Cash crops like indigo and cotton, that was needed in the British industries. So these things, raw material go to things like Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool. There, industrialization will happen. What all problems will emerge, and who will solve it? Those administrative theorists will solve it. And Taylor will solve those problems. This integrated Indian agriculture into the volatile global capitalist market. But Irfan Habib will say it was a commercialization without prosperity for the peasant. This will be also a major reason that British wanted indigo and cotton, and they did not let the peasant grow rice, wheat, whatever they wanted to grow. This led to large scale famines. Almost 50 lakh people in Bengal. Uh, how much it was? 5 million or 50 million? Just check how many people died in Bengal famine. 2 to 3 million. Imagine 20, 30 lakh people. 30 lakh people at that time died in Bengal because they did not have food. I mean, 30 lakh would be the combined deaths in both world wars. Right? So this was the reason, this problem of cash crops and hyper commercialization. Then there was a rise of money lenders. Money lenders rose. So the very issue of debt trap for cultivators emerged. Okay? So we also say whatever China does, debt trap diplomacy they do. So this was also a debt trap for cultivators. Decline of Indian agriculture. So Indian agricultural practices declined. So the problem with indigo and cotton plantation was, once you grow indigo, for many years you cannot grow any other crop because it takes away all the nutrition from that crop, from that land. Okay? So it did not allow any other crop to grow. So indigo was such a problem. How did indigo go away? Do you know how it went away? No? Movement done by Gandhiji, Champaran Satyagraha. But how did globally indigo went away? So just when Gandhiji, after that, during this period when this Champaran Satyagraha was going on, there was a guy in Germany. He developed something called synthetic indigo, synthetic dye. Previously, if you have to dye clothes, you needed indigo. Now, once with the development of synthetic dye, you need what? You need no, you don't need indigo. And indigo was costly because it is grown, it has to be brought in, it has to be treated, etc. etc. But now, if there is a synthetic dye that can be produced through chemicals, that is much more cheaper, much more scalable in nature. So you let them produce. So synthetic dye took over the world. Now imagine one particular innovation in Germany, it changed the whole system altogether. Hmm. Similarly, you will see once you start studying world history also, the topics, you will see how American Revolution led to a lot of cotton demand from India. And once those cotton demand froze up, so you must have seen when the American Civil War started in the late 1800s, between 1880s around this thing started, right? Abraham Lincoln was president. So the southern states of the United States, they went and fought a war with the northern states. Southern states is where the most African American population live, and there were the cotton plantations. When this war was happening for 5 6 years, cotton wasn't produced from America. America was a British colony back then. Now, from where will the British bring cotton then? India. That was the second option. In India, cotton prices rose. Every cultivator, they took a lot of money from the money lenders to scale up production of cotton. Now they have taken loan, they have scaled up production. Suddenly, after the civil war stopped in America, those production rose, price of cotton fell. They have taken a lot of money from the money lenders. Then what happened was riots happened. Those money lenders got killed by the peasants because the peasants did not have money to pay them back. So money lenders would come after peasants. Peasants went there and light up their, burn down their books, bahi khatas, etc. So this is why Deccan riots also happened. It was because of this. Famines were a reason of this. So Amartya Sen says that British policies included exploitative revenue demands, destroyed people's ability to access food, turning mere droughts into catastrophic famines. Droughts are natural droughts, but famines are man-made in nature. So Amartya Sen uses it called entitlement failures. That because of this cash crop culture, and British being entitled to this 50%, 55% of revenue of the total production. So that is why they wanted, they did not take care of people, and people died of famines. Now, district administration. Let's take a 5 minute break. Will we start? British District Administration. So the topic essentially is how does the present district administration owes its legacy to the British Empire? What all systems that they created that we still follow? Basically, the first unit is the large overview of what in Indian administration, where Indian administration comes from. Okay? We started during Mauryan times and we have reached here. Legacy of British district administration. So as you all know, district is the basic unit of administration. That is where that is the theater of administration. All the things are happening there. Now, the original role was revenue collection. That is why the term collector was used. Okay? The foundation was laid by Warren Hastings with the creation of the office of district collector. The primary impetus was the need of an efficient system to collect revenue after the East India Company acquired the Diwani rights of Bengal. Before that, with whom was the Diwani rights? Kings. Who was the king? Samuddola, Sirajuddaulah, Sirajuddaulah. So Diwani rights was with the East India Company. Diwani rights means what? To collect the right to collect revenue. So now the company has the right to collect revenue. Initially, the collector's role was almost exclusively focused on revenue. His only work is revenue collection. That is the term collector. That is why it becomes district collector. Now, do you think district collector role is the same? There are a lot of other things. Now, this was the original revenue collection. That is why district administration was created. Then came Cornwallis Code and separation of power. Lord Cornwallis introduced certain reforms. He separated judiciary from the executive and created the post of district judge, who would handle judicial matters, leaving the collector with revenue responsibility. However, this separation was not permanent in nature. Now, why did so we understood that this district collector had this revenue collecting function. So what was this judicial function that was taken away from him? He was the judge in the matters of revenue. That if somebody is saying, no, my revenue assessment is this and this much is owed to the state, that means it will be a court in where it will be decided. Which court? Revenue courts. Who heads the revenue courts? The district collector. So he sits and decides in which matter you give what kind of judgment. Okay? Then the amalgamation happened under William Bentinck. The offices of district magistrate and collector were amalgamated. District judge was created. What does magisterial power means? Punishment giving powers. Who gives punishment? The judge gives punishment, right? So the judge was different. This district collector was different. But under William Bentinck, they both merged, both these power merged. Now the district collector had the judicial functions, administrative, and the revenue collection functions. Okay, so that means the district magistrate and the district collector is one office, is one person, but different offices. That is why still the term district magistrate is used, district collector is used. Yes. The district collector also became the district magistrate, becoming the undisputed Rakdo. Thank you. The district collector now also became the district magistrate, becoming the undisputed head of the district. And it wielded immense power over revenue, law and order, and general administration. Now, this concentration of authority in a single individual was the defining feature of the British system, leading to collector being described as the tortoise which supports the elephant. So, elephant is what? Elephant is the huge, this British Empire, and a tortoise. It's a small unit, but it is what it supports the British Empire. Okay, on their back runs the British Empire. Understood? It's also called the Little Napoleon. That means Napoleon had all kinds of power in him. So they created a district collector that will have all kinds of power in it. That is why the importance of imperial or covenanted civil services was there, so that only British person, only a British decides what all to happen. That is why they had a very hard time giving this position to Indians. Yes. The collector magistrate became the embodiment of British Raj, the eyes, ears, and hearts of the government and hands of the government. Philip Mason, the very idea of guardian was created, that there's a paternalistic guardian who will control whatever is happening. Now, what was the structure of district administration? The DM or the DC is the apex. Okay? So DC, DM is at the apex. Okay? They are responsible for all kinds of function that is under this. Then comes subdivisional officers, or SDM as we know it these days. Districts are divided into subdivisions, each headed by an officer who acted as a link between collector and the lower level administration. For example, there are 4 subdivisions. So 4 SDMs will be there. All will report to the collector. Tehsildars, talukdars. At the tehsil or taluka level, these officials were primarily responsible for revenue collection and land records. So that is what the tehsildar today also does. Then there are village level functionaries. Things such as village accountant, like the patwari. Patwari. They were lowest rungs of administrative ladder, responsible for maintaining land records and assisting in revenue collection. Okay, so this is the structure. So there is a patwari, there are tehsildars or talukdars, then comes the subdivisional magistrate, then comes the district magistrate. So which one do you people want to become? Which level of this? BC. Okay. Ideally, promotion should start happening from there. From patwari, you become tehsildar, then. Now, what is the feature? First, centralization, of course. This is the Weberian model of bureaucracy. Centralization. This ensured a clear chain of command and effective control. Then comes the paternalistic approach, the very culture of my bap culture. That collector is the my bap of the district. That means the parent of the district. Everything that he does, everything that the collector wants to do, it does for the people, and everything people want to make things happen, collector. Emphasis on law and order, the exclusive power is in maintaining law and order. There is procedural rigidity. Okay? So whatever they did through that lot of paperwork. The red tapeism will come here. This procedural elitism of the Indian civil services. So because the British were the one who were ruling this, who were a part of this. Anybody who embodied their role, they started thinking that I am the colonial ruler. Okay? So this is why this elitism, this idea of elitism comes. Now, what is this legacy? The office of the district collector, it continues to be the most important functionary in the district. Okay? The district was the basic unit of administration. Still, it is happening. Hierarchical structure is there. We have discussed, and coordinating rule. It has to coordinate with all the people below him and all the people above him in the state government. So they'll have to coordinate. So that is the role of the district collector. But these things have changed. See. There is shift from law and order to more development administration. Then there is democratic decentralization. 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment has happened, and the decentralization of powers are. So there are elected representatives in the Zilla Parishad, etc., who are the ones who control all of this. Huh. Now this problem, we'll actually study this under what do you say? Under local governments, because this will make sense in the next topic we'll do. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll eat this and come. So now in present uh, conditions in India, how has the district collector's role look like today? We have seen that a lot of things have merged, how present hierarchy also works. Now, S.R. Maheshwari, he's saying that the relation between collector and the members of the Zilla Parishad who have been elected locally by people, it's a very uneasy relationship. A lot of tensions are there. Why? Because traditionally, a lot of role has been given to the collector, and he is the implementer of things. But this Zilla Parishad, they have gotten these new functions. So they want to control the collector's functions or whatever the collector wants to do. So this is creating this uneasy relationship. So the collector's role is meant to shift from a doer to a facilitator. But the legacy of centralized authority often leads to conflict and undermines the autonomy of local self-government. So because the collector is a significant authority in that region, so it undermines the authority. Increased political interface has been there. Now, presently, when the collector was British, do you think there was a lot of political pressure on him? No, right? Because he is the one who is the government. But now there is a lot of political pressure. Why? Because elected politicians are controlling the bureaucrat. Representative democracy has happened. Then there was no representative democracy. Political pressure was not there. Erosion of authority. So collector's responsibility has multiplied, but one can argue that the total authority he used to have, unchallenged authority in a district, it is not there. Because because magisterial functions or all those judicial activities that the collector had to do, it is now done by the district judiciary. Okay, lot of different functions have been. There is a district development commissioner. That's a different office altogether. So role of collector. So there are at the district level there are a lot of different functionaries who are there now. That is making the collector's role or collector's authority very diluted in nature. Now next is local government. That how local self-government emerged during the time of British Raj and how it looks like today. Okay, we'll see this evolution. Introduction: the genesis of local government. So the early phase. You all remember Paul Appleby? He used his name. He'll also have some comments on this. Early phase. The first municipal corporation was established in Madras, 1688. 1688, imagine. When did the Battle of Plassey happen? Buxar happened. When did Plassey happen? Yes, 1757. Imagine how long before it was established in Madras. British are there since then, or even before that. They took that Farman from Jahangir, right? What year was that? Hmm? When did Akbar die? Jahangir came after Akbar. When did Babur come to India? You need to remember these timelines or it will mess up something. So 1526, Mughal Empire started under Babur. In between, Sher Shah Suri came, etc. Things happened. So till early 1600, from 1602 to 1608, there will be a transition, and Jahangir will come. And then after Jahangir is there, that royal farman will be taken by that British, whoever the person was, will take that royal farman, and British will start trading in India. Then presidency towns like Bombay, Madras, etc. will happen. So suddenly Robert Clive did not make the British Empire. It was built since it took 150 years for the British to become a formidable force to challenge a Diwan of or Emperor of Bengal at that time, Sirajuddaula. It was built meticulously with time. It was built. So now you understand that 1688 they started this particular, followed by Bombay and Kolkata. These bodies were created for administrative conveniences. Okay? These are municipal corporations that were being created in presidency towns, focusing on sanitation, public work for European population. They were dominated by nominated officials, okay, had limited functions, and are not instruments of self-rule. Basically, these people were nominated by the British, and they were mostly British only in that area. And they took care of sanitation, all kinds of public work, etc., etc. They took care of it. Okay? So they were not democratically elected. But the first form of incipient form of local government looks like this. Okay? Paul Appleby notes that British created local bodies to lighten administrative burden and economize cost, not to transfer power. Whatever will happen in the future. See, A.D. Gorawala will say, when is the Ripon resolution? Okay, sorry, we'll read this after we have studied it. In 1882, Lord Ripon he had a resolution for local self-government. Ripon emphasized that local self-government's purpose was not just administrative efficiency, but also to serve as an instrument of political and popular education, so that people know how to deal with politics. Yes. It advocated for a majority of elected non-official members. So people who are elected from these local member bodies, and these are not British officials, non-official members, the election of non-official chairman. So everything is elected, and the devolution of specific financial resources to local bodies. So whatever the finances government had, lot of finances were to be devolved to local bodies and give them to elected officials who are Indians. This was a major breakthrough. Gorawala will say Ripon's resolution marked the first conscious attempt to associate Indians with the task of governance. Yes? Q. Tinker described Ripon's policy as administrative devolution without political faith. It was aimed to pacify the nationalist demand, nothing else. Okay? It was just on paper. Following Ripon's resolution, provincial governments they enacted municipal and local board laws. This led to the creation of a network of district boards for rural areas and municipalities for towns across British India. So, what they are creating is they are creating these local boards and local laws. Okay? And these district boards are taking care of a lot of functions. Okay? (1919) Montagu-Chelmsford Act. Okay? Transferred local self-government to the provincial transferred subject under diarchy. Now, you see there are a lot of elected people there who were responsible, elected Indian ministers were responsible. Under them, local self-government came. That means a lot of power were started to be given to Indians. Provincial autonomy led to more Indian ministers handling local affairs. Yes? But financial dependence and bureaucratic supervision continued. When did this happen? 1919. After 106 years. Still this problem is there or not? Financial dependence and bureaucratic supervision. So, not a lot of it has changed. Ivor Jennings. 1919 reforms recognized the necessity of local government, but not its autonomy. So, local government is necessary for your administrative things to be taken care of, but its autonomy is not necessary. Okay, this is what Jennings is saying. In 1935 Act, it made local government a provincial subject. Yes, provinces responsible for organization, control, and finances of local bodies. Some Indian provincial governments, especially Congress led after 1937, promoted more genuine local autonomy. By 1935, the structure of local government existed, but the spirit was still colonial, hierarchical, centralized, and bureaucratic. So, before independence, things were there, but it was mostly for the convenience of the British. It was not to penetrate into the grassroots of democracy. Now, British, they created two-tier systems: urban local bodies and rural local bodies. Urban local bodies are municipal corporations you have in Delhi, Bombay, etc. Municipal boards and municipalities that happen in small towns, and town committees are there when it comes to more smaller towns. Rural, there are district boards and sub district boards at tehsil or taluka level. Okay? Their primary functions are same as today: okay? Sanitation, street light, roads, local roads, etc. Now, what were the sources of revenue they created? Because these things will be directly be implemented in India as it is. Not a lot will change. So property tax or house tax will be there, octroi will be there, tolls and market fees, licenses, grant and aid, all of these things will be there. Limited local cesses on land revenue, tolls, heavy dependence on provincial grants were there. Okay, so this was happening. Supervision and control. Now, this was an important thing. District collector remained immense supervisory authority, especially over rural boards. District collector had a lot of control. So, essentially, even if these people were elected as the members of those, still the British officer or the ICS officer had the control over them. Yes. They could often sanction budgets, approve appointments, and even suspend resolutions. Yes. Provincial departments exercise strong financial control through grant audits and rules, severely limiting real autonomy. So, the provincial departments are what? Those state government ministries. At that time, it was called provincial. Provincial Civil Services, PCS. Yeah, provincial government means state government. Now, what kind of legacy do we have? They did lay down the institutional foundation. Okay, this is a municipality. These are local bodies, etc. Introduction of election, that how election are going to happen in this, non-official members they are. There was a training ground for leadership. Municipal councils and district boards become the first platform for political leaders like Nehru, Sardar Patel, Rajagopalachari. They got a lot of public service experience and administrative experience in this. So whatever challenges and different things the British threw at us, our leaders used that challenge as an experience and rose up. Okay? So that is why India and Sri Lanka remained as balanced polity. Administrative capacity. So this actually led to administrative capacity building, right? Because there will be sanitation workers, there will be state engineers will go ahead and work. So this led to administrative capacity building. What were the negative consequences? The very term used as grass without roots. So even though you talk about grassroots democracy, there is grass, there is no roots, because Indians are not involved in any of this. Centralized control of the district administration, fiscal weaknesses because state government departments used to have all the powers. Narrow functional domain. So whatever the functions that has been given to them, it is very narrow in nature. For example, local roads, local markets, who cares about them? So whatever the state does not care, state gives it away. Whatever actually matters to the state does not share. Social exclusion. The elitist nature of these bodies meant that interest of lower castes, women and poor were largely ignored. Nobody took care of them. So independent India inherited these institutional skeleton. All of these, they remain somewhat similar. From tomorrow, what we'll do is, you know the basics of now what how Indian administration is there right now. You know the basics of it. What we'll start is, we'll do that exercise that we did in the first class. Again, what all topics are there, just as a refresher for us tomorrow. Then tomorrow you have Monday, class Monday. Then what happens is, uh, then we'll pick out those issues and we'll discuss the issues. And we'll study issue wise first. First, let's complete what is important for the exam. Then we can move back to the syllabus and see what we have missed out, because there is no point rereading those issues again, right? So first we'll go through those issues that are being asked. About 30-35 issues we'll go through that are directly asked in the question, and then we'll go back to what exactly we have missed out on the syllabus. We'll make those word wise notes and that will be done. Till this time you are following? Okay. Till this time the methods you are fine with, right? ठीक है. Questions discuss करते हैं. Two questions I will write today. Write the first question. Good governance and new public management are complementary, quote unquote. Discuss. Let's discuss. What all have you written? Hmm. Crux of the question you have answered. Now, how to actually start with the answer? Of course, firstly, in the introduction, what will you write? How will you deal with this? Introduction में क्या लिखोगे? दोनों में क्या ऐसा सिमिलैरिटी है? हाँ, थोड़ा और. Okay. Then you'll answer how they are complementary in nature. Okay. How they are complementary in nature? Then speedy delivery of services. So delivery or outcome is the focus of both. That outcome is important. If there is a need of the public, you'll have to deliver. Who delivers, we don't care. You'll have to deliver. Private sector delivers, public sector delivers, we don't care. You'll have to deliver. Now, so the focus is through this two things: efficiency, that you have to deliver efficiently, and whoever is delivering should be accountable to the public. Yes, this was. Then what is the next point you have written? Public redressal mechanisms. So, citizens have greater control over services now. They can demand services, and if you do not do so, there are grievance redressal mechanisms. Yes. So, grievance redressal mechanisms like CP grams, etc. So, these are what? These are those new management orientation ideas that were started under NPM but continued with good governance. Now, when it comes to NPM and good governance, what time period will you rate? When did these things start? In India, but around the world, what will you rate? 1980s. And good governance? Huh. So around 1990s. 10-year difference was there. But they overlapped, continued. There was not that, okay, today from now on, NPM has ended, tomorrow, good governance. No, this is not how it happens. Today they have decided, okay, NPM ends. Tomorrow, good governance. Then today they have decided Washington consensus till today. From tomorrow, London. No, these are evolutionary things that governments are going through, markets are going through, processes that are happening. Now, the orientation is towards citizens. NPM was focusing on clients, but they were delivering goods and services. Focus on delivery. Then what is next? Or what next you have written? Lean government. The three E's: efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. Three E's are focused on this. Then what is there? Value orientation. Should we write value orientation? But NPM में value orientation was new public administration was value oriented, but new public management, how was that value oriented? What values were we focusing on then? Three E's only, huh? मतलब public तो है, but स्पेसिफिक वैल्यूज क्या है? ये बोलो मैनेजमेंट का वैल्यूज ही मैनेजरियलिज्म में है ना, वैल्यूज 3 E's में है. Can be written. What does it say? Complementary discuss. So we'll have to write a counter perspective also. So what is the counter perspective? Hmm? Hmm. Hmm. So in such questions which are open-ended, of course, you for the first 1.5 page you write all of these things. Then you write a counter perspective. Now imagine this was a 15 marker. What will you write for those 3 pages? This will finish in 2.5 page. In such questions, you can also write how they complementarily look in India. There is an India specific scope you can give. That in India, it looks like this. This fetches you significant amount of marks. Paper 1, paper 2 both. Once you write a India specific dimension, paper 2 is whole India dimension. In paper 1, if you write a India specific dimension, that whatever Fole is saying, this is the India specific dimension of this. It will boost your marks like anything. For the same answer of theory that you have written, you will get 110. If you just write the India specific perspective, 25 marks will increase. So extra one mark in every answer. 20 marks is increasing here only. So if you write an India specific thing, automatically when you write the conclusion, you write a more holistic conclusion. It automatically boosts your mark. Okay? Because India specific things you write certain limitations also. You write a conclusion. So that makes your answer a whole thing. Yes, that is why it is very much important in paper 1 to write an India specific perspective. And okay, this theory is fine. You have explained through example, this theory is fine. How does this theory look like in India? That is what actual application of your knowledge comes in. Else, I mean, public administration is not such a huge subject that we study for 6-7 months. So that means where else does public administration test you? It does not test you with the length of the syllabus because public administration comparatively is very short. In public administration, both the papers will do in 4 months. In bigger optionals, 4 months is one paper. Yes. 4.5 months will complete. But here, I mean, other subjects, it's only what 7-8 months are minimum in those subjects. That's the thing. So you are tested here only. What do you do with this? Because even if you have completely studied the syllabus, till that time you have not started writing answer. Everything will seem very vague to you. It is just like a sentence. What will you write? So it's just like that. Now it is becoming easier for you through brainstorming, right? That how to make this animated. Next question you write. Another question. Yes. Uh, how does NPM was in Indian perspective? Think good governance we know. E-governance is happening. We are letting locals decide whatever is important. We have included NGOs in service delivery. You can write. How did NPM look like in India? And how does that NPM took off and became good governance in India? How did? They were started getting privatized. Okay? Now what happens? They became privatized. What are these private entities doing now? For example, Air India got privatized. Government is still working with Air India and regulating them, regulatory state, regulating them to provide goods and services to people. So, what is good governance all about? It is about networking, network governance. Yes. Then what else will be there? What else happened under NPM? You have written those things. Think from the Indian perspective examples, those complementary things. So efficiency in service delivery. Now, what did NPM bring into the government departments? Managerialism, target focus. That you complete this much amount of task in this much amount of time. Management wave objectives, yes, good. MBO was also brought in, yes. So managerial focus was brought in. This managerial focus translated into what? This client focus translated into citizen focus. How so? With this efficient government departments, they are able to scale up the deliverables to the public. So this means what? Now this public, the definition of public might change, but the capacity started getting built up through this introduction of management ideas. Yes? So these are certain perspectives you write. It gives your answer a different level of edge altogether, and suddenly your answer looks like a very mature answer. Else, when it comes to theory, the theory are very limited to one and a half page. You can't score with theory. You can, of course, answer the question, the basics of the question with theory. But for you to make use of that theory and ground that theory into the Indian perspective, this is what will stratospherically rise up, take your score. That is the key part, to apply that. And similarly, when you do in public paper 2 of public administration, the similar is to apply. So from tomorrow, I'll start this exercise. We'll take up an issue. We'll think about which theorists will apply in this issue. We'll write it then and there in class. Okay. So we'll start this particular thing. Because once we have brainstormed this in class, it will be very easier for us. Okay. Anything else? Let's end it then. Tomorrow we'll study issues. Plus, another thing we missed out, it brought out bureaucracy from rule based bureaucracy to more performance based bureaucracy. Right? Goal orientation started in. So, management by objective, yes. Uh, paper 2, all the note, unit 2, all the notes you have what? Unit 2, paper 1. How will I send this to you then? I'll, I'll see. I'll see. I'll speak to them. Else, I'll. Development administration.